Hey guys, Rick Stone here from Our Stony Acres. Welcome to our YouTube channel. Today we are going to be talking about things that you can still plant in September. Yeah, it's not too late. There are still some things that you can be growing in September. It's going to be mostly cool season crops and mostly greens really, but there's still quite a bit that you can be growing. Now this video is intended for those of you that live in zones 5, 6, and 7. Okay, if you live in the warmer zones, there's quite a bit more that you can be planting in September. And if you look right up here, there's actually a link that will take you out to a video that I did a while ago on things that you can be planting in September in some of those warmer zones, okay? But for those of you that live in 5, 6, and 7, there's quite a bit that you can still be planting. A few things from transplants, most stuff from seeds, and most of it's going to be greens, leafy greens and things like that. But there is still quite a bit that you can be growing in September. One other thing that is really going to help you if you live in these colder zones would be like a hoop house or a cold frame. Either one of those is going to help you to be much more successful with these crops. Everything that I am going to be planting this weekend will either end up in a cold frame or a hoop house or against a really warm, sunny south-facing side of my house in the case of some of the things that we're going to be planting in pots today. So before we get to the list, I just wanted to remind you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Make sure that you click the notification bell so you get notice every time I release new videos. Also, please go follow us on Instagram. There's a link down in the description below for you that you can go jump over and follow us there. I try and get out in the garden almost every day and do something on the stories there, and so it's kind of a fun little place, and I'd love to have you follow us there as well. I also wanted to thank our sponsor for this video, which is Smart Pots. And Smart Pots has partnered with us on this video. We're going to be showing you how to use some Smart Pots a little bit later on in this video, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about the benefits. But thank you to Smart Pots for sponsoring this video and in part making it possible. So super glad to have them on board as a sponsor. All right, so let's talk first about timing and what we should be doing timing-wise for our planting. And here's the key. You got to get it planted as soon as possible, okay? So the sunlight, the warm temperatures, all of that stuff is going to be going away very, very quickly. And so we need to get seeds and transplants in as soon as possible so that we can get as much growing time as we possibly need. And then again, a cold frame or hoop house is really going to help out with these September plantings because it will give you an extended growing season of protection and warmth to help those plants to grow better. So definitely I would suggest if you can pick up a cold frame or a hoop house to take care of that as well. All right, so let's talk about the list and what we can be planting both by transplants and by seedlings. In zones 5, 6, and 7, it's not too late to get some of the cabbage family crops planted if you can get a hold of some transplants, okay? So that's going to be the trick for you. Hopefully you've got a local nursery like I do that has been willing to stock some transplants this time of the year. So I've got some broccoli and I've got some cabbage, and then I also have a parsley plant that we are going to be putting in. But basically anything in the broccoli family, so cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, kohlrabi, Brussels sprouts, any of those can still be planted in early September if you can dig up those transplants. In zones 5, 6, and 7, if you can't find transplants, it's too late in the year to try and grow those from seed, okay? But if you can get those transplants, then definitely you can still get those in. And we're going to actually plant some of those transplants that I picked up yesterday in some of our smart pots here in a minute. But before we move on to that, let's talk really quickly about some of the things that we can be planting by seed. And all of these are going to be planted for greens. So we are going to be looking at things like lettuce and spinach, kale, collards, Minzuna, Bok Choy, Endive, Arugula, Tot Soy. Even beets and turnips you can be growing if you're only planning on having those for the greens, okay? But we're a little bit late in the year to be trying to grow those for roots, but we can be growing those for greens. There's also a couple of specialty crops that you can be planting this time of year, Mache and Claytonia, both of which are new to a lot of people, but they are a great fall crop and do really, really well in the fall and winter because that's kind of the time that they really like And so both Mache, which Mache is also sometimes known as corn salad or lamb's lettuce, and then Claytonia, which is sometimes known as miner's lettuce, both of those are also a great choice. So all of those leafy greens are good options for planting this time of year. And things like kale and Swiss chard are going to be particularly hardy and should do really, really well. Spinach also is another hardy crop that is also going to do well. And so all of those can still be planted by seed directly in the garden, in your containers, or in your raised beds, wherever you want. And we actually, earlier this week, we planted an 8-foot bed of spinach, and then another 8-foot bed that's kind of a mix of different greens. We've got some bok choy, we've got some lettuce, some kale, and kind of a few other specialty crops that you could also be planting. We planted those directly out in the garden, and we plan on putting a cold frame over the top of those probably in 30 to 45 days. When the temperatures really start to get colder, we'll do that. And then also over here in our raised beds, we are going to be pulling out some of the stuff that's there. We've got some sweet potatoes and a few things that are about ready to come out, and so we will be planting some later September plantings of lettuce and kale and things like that that will actually overwinter and kind of be a spring crop for us. So we won't be harvesting those during the winter time because we're going to be so late getting them in, but they'll actually do really well in the spring. Now, another trick that I have found works really, really well is to plant in containers this time of year. And you're gonna want them to be in movable containers, which is why the smart pots are so great for that, because they have these built-in handles that are going to make it pretty easy for you to move these guys around. And planting a lot of these crops, we're going to actually have them out somewhere in an empty spot in the garden where it's maybe a little bit cooler, but as the temperatures start to cool off, you can move those containers against a south-facing wall or a south-facing part of your house, somewhere where it's going to get plenty of sun exposure, and also the warmth and protection of that south-facing wall will really, really help to extend your growing season. And so that's what we're going to be doing today with our smart pots. We're actually going to be planting cabbage and broccoli and parsley in some of our smart pots, and then we'll put those eventually they'll make it over here to a south-facing part of our house that's kind of protected by an overhang, and will allow that to extend the growing season of those containers as well. So let's take a look at the smart pots. We'll talk a little bit more about them, do a little planting. Again, I want to thank Smart Pots for sponsoring this video. I've got some smart pots that I used earlier in the year that we are going to be now. I've harvested the crops out of these, and so the first thing that I did with these pots is I freshened up the soil in the pots by adding some compost to it. So it's important that you kind of continually update and freshen up the soil in these containers. You don't have to throw it away. You don't have to put brand new soil in every time you use them, but it does help to add some compost, maybe a handful of organic fertilizer to the soil to kind of freshen things up every time you use them. So we added a good amount of compost to these, and now we're ready to go. Now, one of the big things that I like, and one of the reasons why I've chosen to plant some of these broccoli and cauliflower, or I'm sorry, broccoli and cabbage in these smart pots, is because they're just so easy to move, and it makes it so convenient. Because right now I want them out in the garden, so we've got some open space. We just harvested all our potatoes, and there's plenty of open space. I want them out there where it's a little bit cooler, where they're in contact with the soil, where they're getting plenty of sun. But later on, I'm actually going to want them to be over here against my house. They're going to be sitting on concrete, and you know, right now it's not a good place because we're still in the 90s. We will be for another week or so before it starts to cool off. So it's really, really hot, and I don't want them there right now. But it's going to be super convenient to move these smart pots over to that area later, and then we'll be able to have more sun exposure, more warmth from the wall, and a little protection to kind of help keep these crops growing, hopefully all the way into November, when we will be ready to harvest them. Okay, all right, so we are going to plant a few things today, and I'm not going to take you through all of it, but we've got and again, this shows the great range of pots, sizes that they have. We've got the 20-gallon pot, and we're going to put 3 broccoli plants in this 20-gallon pot. We've got a 15-gallon pot, which we're going to put a couple of cabbage plants in. Then I've got a 7-gallon, I'm sorry, this is a 10-gallon pot that we are going to be using for this parsley plant. And they also have 7 and 5 gallon pots, and then they have a broad range of larger pots as well, all the way up to about 1,000 gallons. So you know, just great product, made in the USA, BPA and lead free, great for root pruning and all that kind of stuff. So I really do love Smart Pots, and I'm glad that they have signed on as a sponsor for my channel, and just appreciate them a lot. So let's, again, I'm not going to take you through planting all of these because that would make for a very boring video, but let's, we're going to put, and wow, that's a nice looking start, a little bit overgrown maybe on the roots. Didn't grow this one myself, but this is just a parsley plant. Parsley does really well in the fall. It's very frost tolerant. It'll actually even make it all the way through the winter. And so we're just gonna put this guy in there. We'll water these in. So I'll do kind of a cutaway of things planted. And then we're just gonna put these directly out in the garden for now, and then move them closer to the house where they can be protected later on. So, all right. That is what you can plant in September, and hopefully this video was helpful to you guys and that you enjoyed it. Definitely get out there and get it done quickly. Starts are going to disappear very quickly from the nurseries as they kind of shut down for the year, so call ahead, see if you can find some starts. Get out and get some seeds planted with your leafy greens, your lettuces and spinaches, Swiss chard, kale, collards, things like that. All of those can still be planted by seed, but you really, really need to hurry if you live in zones 5, 6, and 7, okay? All right, so hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Please make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. Give it a thumbs up if you like this video. If you've got any questions or comments, leave them down in the comment section below. I try and monitor those every day and answer any questions that you might have. Also, please go follow us on Instagram. There's a link down in the description below. And then again, thank you to Smart Pots. I've got a link in the description for Smart Pots where you can go out and buy your own Smart Pots. Really, really have been enjoying working with these guys and working with these pots this summer. So I think you're really going to like that. Okay, that's all I have for you for this week. Everybody have a fantastic week. We'll see you next week. Happy gardening.